Hello and welcome back to art class. Today we are going to be continuing on and actually wrapping up our warm, cool weave. So where we should be, you should have colored the warm and you should have color cold. They should be matching like this. The back side is a little bit different. On the cold one we folded it in half, and on half we have the top here. You got, this is very important, that you have the stop line here at where it opens. If you have it here where it closed and is folded, it's not going to work and you're going to have to redo it because you didn't pay attention to the directions. Okay? So you need to make sure that this stop line is clearly up here on the open side. Okay? Then you'll have every inch you've measured out a straight line going down. I ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. This last one is a little bit smaller because my paper is actually 8.5 inches wide, and that's why it ends up being a little bit shorter on this last one. Then on the back of the warm colored one, I have measured down, and you end up with 11 spots because we should have it numbered 1 through 11 like this. Okay. And today we're going to assemble this together into the weave. So you're going to need a couple things. You got your pictures. You may want to have your eraser handy. You want to have scissors. You're going to need glue, and you may even want to have a pencil handy. The pencil and eraser shouldn't really be needed too much, but they are always good to have with you. Okay. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of cutting. The first piece we need is this one right here. You're going to cut on your lines up to the stop line, which is one of the reasons why it says stop right at the top. And you got to cut right to the very line. Okay, don't end before it. You want to be right on it, or maybe just a smidge hair. If you go just a smidge hair past the line a little bit, that's okay. But you want to try your best to land right on it as best you can. Be careful with this last strip here. It will want to rip off when you're working on it. Okay, so you kind of get this fringe look. Then you're going to open this up very carefully so it looks like this. And we're going to work from the back because our numbers for this sheet are on the back. So that's how we're going to do this. Okay, now here's the odd thing. We are actually going to work from the bottom up. It actually works easier that way. Now, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut off the strip number 11. So we're going to work backwards. All right, then we're going to weave. And weaving is a very simple pattern. It's under, over, under, over, under, over. That's all it is. So under the first one. And then since this is, actually, before I get started, I'm sorry. Number 11 is actually an extra. If you notice, if it was going to weave, it would fit here at the bottom. Well, if you notice, there's no cutting down here at the bottom. So we're just going to put number 11 off to the side because we won't actually need number 11. We actually need number 10 to start with. That was my mistake. Starting with number 10. Okay. Again, with my pattern of under, over, under, over. So I'm going to go under the first one, over, then under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Okay, and I'm going to slide it down as far as it'll go. Make sure it's as even as I can make it. Okay, now unfortunately right now I can't see my number, but when I go to do number 9, so let me cut out number 9. It's gonna switch, so this first one was under, so my next one has to be over. So it just flips the pattern. So over, under, over, under, over, under. Okay. Then again, I'm going to slide it down as far as it'll go. Try to make sure there's always enough room for the next pieces to fit perfectly. Okay, now you can see that my number is now visible. And this pattern is just going to switch back and forth, back and forth. So I'm going to do a couple more. I'm going to try to go to about the halfway mark. Now I'm going to switch it back. So this one's over, so the next one is under. So it's always flipping an opposite of the one next to it, like a checkered board or a chessboard. Okay, now that I got a couple pieces in place here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over carefully, and I'm going to look at it. And you can see how the designs are meshing together and creating this really neat look. And because we made copies of everything, the two spirals are the same, the spiral line should fit close to the same spot, so it will just switch colors when it's hitting. So it should be pretty closely fitting. I'm going to continue on. And at this point, I'm going to speed up the video. All right, so I am down to my last two pieces here, number 1 and 2. A little secret, number 1 will not be used. Number 2 is the one you really want to aim for to get those last piece. But here's the thing, I can already tell that number 2 is going to be a really, really tight fit. Even though I have moved all my pieces down as I went and doing it right now as I'm talking, I know it's still a tight fit. So what I'm going to do before I cut this piece out, I really want to get this last one in there because that's a really big gap to be missing a piece. So what I'm going to do is, this is where you have to be super careful. I am going to go in and do what I consider a little cheat. I am going to snip each of the spots a little bit past the line. That way I can fit it in place. If you go too far, you'll end up snipping the whole thing, and that would be a problem. Okay, so number 1 I'm not going to use, but number 2, I'm going to go in, and it's going to be a super tight fit, so you got to go slow when you're weaving this last one. Now, one thing you might notice as you're going along, you'll have seen that only my odd numbers happen to be showing because of how I started my weaving in the bottom. Was the even numbers were underneath at first. It could be for you that maybe you have all even numbers on top, depending on how you started. And as long as it's a consistent pattern, you probably are okay. Once you have it all weaved together from the back, then you can flip it over, and then you can look at it from the front. You don't want to flip it over to the front all the time because the pieces get a little loose and then they don't fit right. And then what I'm doing is a little adjustments just to make sure pieces line up on the edges. Once I have that done, that's where your glue comes in handy. You're going to carefully, and you're going to use dots for glue for this. Well, maybe by gluing the glue tip here. There we go. Little dot of glue, small because you don't want it to ooze out. Glue the ends of each and every one of the ends. You're gonna do it on the front side, and you're gonna do it on the back. You do not need to glue any of this. This doesn't need to be done. Just the ends. And then I flip it over and do the same thing to the back. What I need you to do then at this point is, now that it's all glued and ready to go, take a photo of it, upload it to Google Classroom, and I will see you next week.